Welcome to Musing with Tonya D podcast. Once again, I am your host, a practicing holistic shaman, medium, and otherworldly life coach and subtle energetic surgeon. My intention is to utilize the power of indigenous technologies, the ancient wisdom of our bones, our original divine blueprint to navigate through our soul's harmonic, the realm of the elementals, the elemental highway, into and through the imaginal realm, possibly reintroducing you to the magical being I believe resides within each and every one of us, unique and as individual as our thumbprint. Through these subtle realms and bodies, the energetic anatomy to raise our frequency to the prime directive, to our inner genius, our personal medicine. I do call myself a holistic Sha medium, which is a choreography of merging them all. My name is Tonya D, and welcome to my podcast, Medicine Room. I do go live on YouTube at Tonya D for a daily snippet. Each day I share the element of the day coming from the 4 pillars of Chinese astrology or destiny. These 4 pillars are actually a gateway into the realm of your personal elemental highway, and you may be wondering or pondering why that's so very important. Well, once you understand or have an idea of the elementals, you can then utilize them for healing a variety of symptoms and conditions and balancing our personal elements with our gift and our purpose, our prime directive, whether it's our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, our spirit, our mental academy, energy, vitality, transformation, and so much more. It's all part of the cosmic soup. The spirit that resides within each element is also a part of our elemental structure or foundation, along with these subtle energies, bodies, and fields and cosmic insights, messages, and so much more, might I add. So going beyond being inspired and just loving the season of the witches, nature's transformation, the magic, the variety of guests that I've actually had and literally enjoyed during the season, this podcast season. That's why I do title the show The Musing with Tonya D, because it's about musing. So if there's anybody that you wish to hear from again that really got you excited about life and really your own magical essence that resides within each and every one of us, please comment and share and let me know. And of course, stay curious, questioning everything. That is also one of my mantras. This week's audio artist in the season of The Witches with Musing with Tonya D is Dawn DelVecchio. She's the founder of the Return of the Priestess speaker series, the Return of the Priestess private community, and the lineage barrier of the MotherSpirit Priestess line. She has served as a priestess for more than 37 years with a deep background in goddess lore, ceremony, spiritual counsel, channeling, tarot, and soul astrology. Dawn hosts retreats and offers online courses, tarot, and astrology readings for women called to the path of sacred feminine leadership. Okay, so with all of that, let's welcome Dawn DelVecchio to my audio medicine room. How are you doing today, Dawn?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm so excited to dive into the dragon ley lines. Can you share with my audience about the dragons, and who doesn't love a great dragon story?
Yeah. Ooh, wow. There's so much to unpack here. I am not someone who ever expected to be working with interdimensional beings or elemental beings. My son was really into dragons when he was young. But as a young adult, I began going to Southeast Asia, and you find the iconography of dragons everywhere. They're often called nagas over there, although there is some distinction between what a naga is and a dragon. They're very similar. And this past year or so, my own spiritual work has opened up my capacity to perceive other beings a little bit, but the dragons and the nagas came in very, very strongly when I was in Asia this year. I had already been channeling. And in fact, I had verbally channeled dragon mothers before, but never to the degree of what I'm experiencing now and that's unfolding. So of course, when something like that comes in, at least for me, I start doing research on it. And what I found is there is some kind of energetic correlation, and I'll pull in some different threads here between the archetypes and the images of dragons, the energy grid of Earth, and the new energies or new earth that we are sort of, co-creating right now, that where our timeline is bringing us into. So historically, if you look back through many, many cultures, there's lots of different images of dragons or serpent beings, nagas. That's more common in Buddhism and Hinduism and Asia, in the countries that are influenced by those. But other areas too, like you can even think about the Quetzalcoatl. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, the winged or the rainbow serpent, and the winged serpent of Central America, I believe, or Mexico. So there's all this imagery. And then as we have tuned deeper into Mother Earth, we've come to understand, and there's even people doing research on it, that there's an energetic grid, lines, if you will, that crisscross all around the earth. Where their intersecting points are places of great power. And you can see that there are numerous ancient historic sites that are built on the crosshairs of these grid points: Machu Picchu, the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, Easter Island. It goes on, including some of the great cathedrals. Now, those of us who have kind of gone down the rabbit hole of looking at, what's wrong with this world and why is there so much suffering? There's a spiritual dimension to that, and then there's a very physical dimension to that, which has to do with forces that benefit from our ignorance and our servitude. Let's just put it that way. And they have been privy to, some of them and their minions, let's say, have been privy to metaphysical and interdimensional knowledge that has been wiped from our history books. And so they've leveraged the power of these grid lines for their own benefit, for their own power, accumulation of power and energy. So what's happening now on Earth is, as many more star seeds are coming into, and light workers are coming into their own awakening, their adulthood, some are being called online, not web online, World Wide Web online, but like their faculties of multidimensional perception and awareness and connection with divine energies have come online, and they're beginning to do grid work. There have been grid workers and portal keepers for many years now. I've known about this, but I never thought I would be called to it, but I have been called to it. And there are those grid workers who, and I'm going to back into the dragons here, I'm going to weave these two together in a moment. Those grid workers are doing all kinds of things, including really transforming energy areas that have been very infused with negative energy. And my calling is a little bit different, and it correlates with this connection with the Nagas, these water serpent interdimensional beings that are very benevolent and guardians of the earth, as are the dragons. So the dragons, what we're coming to understand is that the dragons, like so many things in our world, have been given a bad rap when actually they were the earth guardians. And they were the interdimensional beings that float around the earth, in the inner earth and the energetic realm, not unlike the way the grids are crisscrossing the earth. And thanks to light forces of other dimensions who have been in this intergalactic war for Earth and to reclaim Earth and to support Earth's ascension, the dragon mothers have returned. That's what I call them. Other people may call them different things. And these beings really want to work with us to support Gaia's ascension and to clear the grid lines of the detritus of negativity, suffering, and trauma. And so for me, what that has unfolded as, and where and when that unfolded, was in Southeast Asia, where there has been tremendous suffering. I mean, all over the planet. Okay, it's not just one place. I think we're all assigned many, different tasks in different places. But in Southeast Asia, which is the place that I love and have spent many, many years, there's tremendous trauma on the lands. So for example, and I think we talked about this in our meet and greet, the country of Laos, which is right next door to Thailand, between Thailand and Vietnam, as well as the country of Cambodia, which is just south of that again, and Vietnam. These countries have been bombed to bejesus. I mean, it was horrendous what was done by the CIA and the US government during the 60s and 70s, and then Pol Pot regime in Cambodia. And So the people there have lineage now, years of trauma from, being bombed, living in caves, having their crops destroyed, seeing their, family blown up from little bombs and limbs removed and stuff. And so I have been called to go in to become a conduit to bring light into those grids. So I'm not called, for example, as some are, to go to really heavy duty places like the Vatican or Washington, D.C. to clear those things, but rather to serve the people and the lands where people have had a lot of suffering. Same here in the Southwest, the Trail of Tears and the native peoples here. Yes, there's lots of things we can do on the 3D realm too, education, healing, ceremony, etc. And these grids, these energy, the energetics of the earth also are calling for healing. And the dragon mothers and the Nagas want to work with us to support this healing, this infusing the grids of earth with greater light, and light is information, and greater love. So I can go on and on, but maybe now you can kind of navigate me where you want to go with that big sort of opening statement.
Well, the dragons to me, it's like old Earth, right? These are
Ooh,
beings that have been around for before we were around.
yeah,
When you think
ancient.
about it, it's kind of like going into literally the old Earth, like the beings of the other world. I just always am curious to how we ever got sidestepped away from being connected to the keepers of the earth, whether it's the keeper of the wild, the keepers of the caves, the candomblé, the fae, all these
Mhm.
beings that, they kind of went in hiding
Yeah.
for some reason. And I always wonder how we got away from the origins of that.
It's a great question. I don't have an answer. I think, I can speculate that there's been such meddling with the natural world by forces outside of this earth who have a negative agenda. To what they did was create basically a planet of slavery. Debt slavery is the current iteration, right? And so those beings are too sensitive. I really feel like those who have benefited from our unconsciousness they invert everything. Everything is inverted. So if it's bad, it's probably good. If it's good, it's probably bad. And while that's a very simplistic rule of thumb, I think we could start with that and then use our own inner guidance and our discernment and our wisdom and our intuition to tease it out. So when we look at dragons, as I said, they've gotten a bad rap. Why? Probably because they were actually the allies of Earth and the allies of humans. And there are some who say, like, Lisa Renee's work in particular, whom I listen to a lot of and study some of her material. Some of these beings, these magnificent dragon beings, were dismembered. They were holding the Christed light of a higher consciousness, and they were destroyed in wars. And the forces of light are supporting their rememberment, putting them back together. And the capacity for these beings to be back here with us.
Yeah, I remember years ago, I'll say 20, 30 years ago, I actually was in the process of bringing in a different healing line into my business. I've always been into energy work and chakras and the elementals and feng shui and the body and whatnot. And I was awake and I was driving to my then business and I kept seeing a dragon, this slumbering, waking dragon. I couldn't get it out of my waking state, dream state. I mean, I was awake driving
Mm.
and it was this slumbering dragon. It kept waking up and then falling down. And I was like, what's up with the dragon? And then I got to my then business and I'd opened a package from this company and their logo was the white yin and yang dragon.
Ooh.
So I knew that was a very clear message from my guides and my spirit team. And I brought in this entire method and philosophy that was all based on traditional Chinese medicine, the yin and the yang, along with the chakras. So I've been working with light and sound and vibration to heal the body through the modality of the skin, energetics for that long, but that's how
Mm,
that all got downloaded was
wow.
the dragon. And I actually have a dragon pagoda that I found, and I knew the value of it. It's actually made from, I believe, sandalwood. It's a wood that they no longer allow you to harvest.
That would be teak. Is it heavy? Is
It's
it a bit heavy?
heavy, but I
Yeah.
felt like it was sandalwood for
Well, it could
some.
be. Yeah, it could be that sandalwood's not allowed also. But I know
Yeah,
teak is definitely not in a lot of that area, and it's a very heavy wood.
but the carvings on it, I had it redone, and the people that do antique, they had it for over a year. They the dad had never seen anything that
Wow.
amazing. Yeah, with clouds and dragons and all the things. But so yeah, I think, and dragons, I think what's interesting is I do 4 pillars of Chinese astrology, but the reason I brought that in was for healing, so people could understand their elementals of the earth plane, the heavens, the sky, and the characters. But there's different types of dragons as well, whether it's a mountain dragon, a nature dragon, a water dragon, a
Mm,
star dragon. There's just like all the things, there's different elementals that they come with. Gives
yes.
them a different taste, like a white dragon versus a black one. And so, yeah, I believe I can see the old earth beings kind of being stoked like a fire dragon.
Yeah, yeah. And also, well, now that I'm back here in the forest, feeling the energies of like even the barks of certain trees, like we have an alligator juniper around here where I live in New Mexico. And that scaly, it's like almost scale like, and it reminds me of that. And certain mounds we have, like in the middle of the United States, these serpent mounds and things. So there's a lot of, we can see that there are energies, earth, air, fire, water energies that we had lost our perception of as well, that we're coming back to. And this whole thing about frequency is really, I feel that you touched on is super important. And that's a big piece of it. When we vibrate at a very low level in consciousness, we are literally almost walking around blind because our third eye is shut. Our sensitivity is turned off. Fear programming has obstructed our capacity to trust our intuition. Calcification of the pineal gland has prevented us from receiving clear guidance. We've been blocked off. So there's so many ways in which we've not been able to perceive the subtleties of frequency. And so we see, in the third dimensional realm, the notion in consciousness that, okay, a small group of people are going to gather and call in light and infuse the earth with light through the vessel of our intention and notice the frequency shift. That sounds like, oh, that's just your imagination. But as we clear ourselves and attune ourselves more through the healing modalities like what you do and so many, we begin to actually feel the difference and perceive the difference.
Yeah, and I find it's curious though, because I also do cowrie shell divinations,
Mm.
and I give people prescriptions. And the
Mm-hmm.
prescriptions are about a connection to the frequential energy of an elemental, whether it's an elemental being or the elemental itself. And it's very
Cool.
curious. I have some people that are like, what in the hell is she talking about? And then there's others that are like totally do it, and they get into the magic of connecting with another worldly being. And
Mm.
it's just fun watching the shift, but the mind, being a tool, and the conditioning and the programming, and to literally, get out of the program, kind of like
Yeah,
Star Wars and the Force or the Matrix or whatever that
right.
feels like.
Yeah, and so there's a couple other things I want to tie in here that kind of maybe serve as bridges from that, that left brain, very material oriented perception of things before multidimensional perception comes online and this multidimensional world. And one of them is a gentleman named Rory Duff, who's been studying the ley lines, and you may know about him. And he talks about these dragon lines. I'll talk about that. And Dr. Emoto's work with water. So Rory Duff has been studying the ley lines of Earth, and I'm not exactly sure. I have not read his book. I've listened to his interviews, but he's mapped out the Earth, and areas of the Earth with these grid lines. And what he's saying is that his meters, his scientific tools that read the frequencies and energies of these lines are revealing that there are certain of these grid lines that are growing in width, much bigger than other grid lines, and they're moving really quickly. They're powerful and wide. And he calls these dragon lines. So he's definitely someone worth looking into if you want that sort of, some people want a little bit more of the hard science, like, well, how do we know this is true and not just your collective imagination? Well, check out the work of Rory Duff. That would be one thing. And then when it comes to the water, we know that water holds memory. And this is where I'm called to, is work with the water and work with the caves, underground caves, which the Thais at least consider, and probably the cultures generally over there, the doorway to the water door, the doorway to underground waterways, that water holds memory. And we know this by Dr. Emoto's work. You just read his book and look at the pictures. It's so obvious that water is responding to our love, to our presence, to our awareness. And in fact, yesterday, after my meditation, I have a temple here it's a Mongolian yurt, but it's a temple space. I was meditating in there, and the Nagas came in and they said, we want you to be more present with the water. Like even when you're washing dishes, for example, just be grateful, be present, be aware, and offer love, gratitude, offer the intention, see the waters as clean and clear, for example, whether you're in an ocean or a river or whatever. And again, because we can test this ourselves. We can get water and freeze it and, take a couple different batches, offer them different energies, and look at the results. You just need a microscope.
Yeah. Even if you didn't have a microscope, you could speak into the water and put it in the freezer and you can see the crystals
Yeah.
in the water. They give a memo there or something. And I mean, it's down to our cell dynamic. We're a part of the entire frequency. When people speak ill, it does rattle our frequential essence, our own inner waters. And I find a lot of womb, like when we're in the womb, our energy body, it begins to really wake up while we're in the womb of the mother, and those waters, what's being said, what are the songs being sung to the baby in the womb that are creating a code in a way before
Yeah.
they've even arrived, and a lot of that carrying that trauma from the birth mother and the frequency, the sound vibration. And when they arrive into the earth plane, up to 6 months, that's when the root chakra actually is activated and alive and well, kind of between time, space. And then we move into the sacral, the feelings and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah. Hmm. So
Yeah,
I'd love to share something a little bit more about the Nagas and sort of make some distinctions there. It feels
absolutely.
like a
Let's just
place to
dive
go.
in. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. So the Nagas is NAGA, and is the term for serpent guardian beings. And they're perceived by us as part human, part serpent with wings. And their iconography, their imagery is all over Asia. And even, I used to really be a Thai temple geek, or Southeast Asia, really Buddhist temple geek. So I can tell you about all the different iconographic imagery. And even my husband knows certain phrases. And one of them is Naga balustrades. So the balustrades are, the banisters, when you're going up a stairs. And pretty much almost every temple you'll find in that region, a Buddhist wat is what they're called. When you're going into one of the structures within the temple complex, will have these balustrades that are Nagas. And the Nagas are often seen as having multiple heads. Sometimes they have one head, 3, 5, 7, or 9 is the most. And the 9 are considered, this is a being of high, spiritual maturity and wisdom. And in India and Nepal, there's a goddess whose name is Naga Kanya. And actually, the females are usually referred to as Naginis, but they are part of the elemental realm. They're, again, guardians, just like the ancient dragons. They're guardians of the waterways. And it's said that if you pollute the waterways where they live, that you'll pay the price. And obviously, this is a big issue on our planet right now. And I feel like that's part of why they're coming in and why they would choose someone like me, or we would choose each other, let's say, because I have such a passion for that region. I have such an awareness of the symbology and the meanings. And I've spent so much time there and made connections with others who are resonating with the Nagas. And so they also, I know that they work with certain healers. So a lot of times in the massage places, you'll see an image of a rishi, like a Hindu sadhu, and you'll see an image of a snake, a cobra, or a naga, because these are the beings that work with the healers to help them be more powerful healers. So they live underground. That's just how the story goes. And the great ones have ancient power for healing and for protection. Again, protection for the people and the earth, and in the Naga's case, also the waters.
Yeah. I feel like they're connected to it all,
Mm-hmm.
really. I mean, we always talk about the earth elementals, but I mean, there's other elements that, like air as an elemental
Yeah.
being,
The
you know?
sylphs. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a variety, star, ether, mineral, metal, all the things. But I can see that. So it sounds like they've actually kept this sacred connection, being a conduit with these old earth beings.
That's my sense too, is to greater or lesser degrees. At least they've kept it. Sometimes we have to keep things in code during a dark epoch. And this may be one of those things. So, for example, in the story of the Buddha, the Buddha sits under the Bodhi tree and he says, I'm not going to move until I achieve enlightenment. And Mara, the spirit of temptation, or the devil, whatever you want to call it, Mara tries all these different ways to tempt the Buddha to get up. And this is a real great symbolically our mind, the distraction of the mind or whatever. So he sends dancing girls and he sends food and feasts and demons and different things. And at one point, Mara sends a flood. He's like, right, I'm just going to flood you out, Buddha, so you can't sit there anymore. And the king of the Nagas, whose name is Muktalinda, comes and coils his body, his giant body, under the Buddha so that the Buddha rises up above the rising waters, and takes his 9-hooded head and covers the Buddha to protect him from the rain. And so again, we see a story, and like with all myth, you can thread back and see what's the archetypal symbology here, what's the meaning, and really feel and see the way this is an image, a representation that looks sort of like harmless Buddhist mythology, but there's something there to hold the code for when the time was right for people to wake up and remember that this is a
Yes.
protector being.
And we're definitely in it for sure.
Yeah. And
The
think about Medusa, for example, for those of us who've studied goddess iconography for, if that's our passion, that was mine for many years, still is. Medusa is seen very much looks like Nagakanya, actually. She's a serpent being with all of these snake heads, right? And, she turns men to stone, etc. But, what's interesting is on the shield of Athena, the warrior goddess of truth and knowledge and wisdom, is the head of Medusa, a protector of the ancient ways of the feminine. So we see again, it's like a seed or a code for us to rediscover when the time was right. Very much, I would say, akin to or along the conceptual lines of the way the mathematics of the pyramids of Giza were a key code, or, they couldn't use language because language has changed. So what did they use? They used alignment with the stars and mathematic perfection to show a code for someone else to open up that file, to figure it out in the future.
Definitely. This just reminds me of like literally going back to our origins, the origins of our soul, the origins of our spirit. And just like you said, remembering, reactivating, reclaiming, re engaging our authenticity and these old world beings, whether, I mean, even not of the world. I'm even thinking of like Atlantis, Lemuria, Sirius, like beings that are even not of this planet or this world or another galaxy or whatever. There's so much ancient wisdom
Yeah.
to be discovered, and it's been covered up.
Yeah. It's been covered up, and we've been asleep in a way. We've been in a state, and this is what fear programming does. Is you become very selfish. Think about if you're escaping a tiger, let's say, all the blood is going to rush into the center core of the body. You're going to get very selfish. Let me get ahead of the pack. I'm not going to be the last guy or gal in the pack to get taken down by that lion or tiger. And there's not a lot of blood flow also to the brain. So you make short-term decisions that aren't necessarily for the long-term benefit. So now imagine generations traumatized by fear, by pain, by suffering, by war, by you name it, conditioning into self-hatred, the witch burnings, for those of us of the Western lineage, mistrust, etc. It's a wonder we get as far along as we do, actually. But I think this is why the star seeds and the light workers have come in and been coming in for generations, just to begin to open up the light field for it to be possible for the new ones to come and really help us with the light and the building of the new earth to wake up.
Yeah, absolutely wake up. And not, I mean, it's still interesting is how many, just witnessing those that are still asleep. And
Yeah. And the dream spell that's being woven and spun is once you wake up, you're like, it's so obvious. And you don't even have to be like spiritually awake talking about this stuff. Common sense, people, simple stuff. What's obvious is obvious. And yet the twisting slowly over time, the manipulation of the education system, of religion, of medical, of giving up our sovereign authority, of even our ability to think logically, has been a slow progression over a long period of time. And still, those of us who can see what's going on are like, can't you people see this? So no, not everyone is ready to wake into this. And this, to me, this has something to do also with what you could call soul evolution or soul maturity. As an evolutionary astrologer, I'm looking at the evolutionary journey of the soul. And when I work with a client, it's not until I'm with that client that I have a sense of sort of where they're at, regardless of what's in their chart. It has to do with the evolution of the soul. And so, when I look at people who are really buying narratives, making choices that I know are not going to be beneficial for their mind-body vehicles, to say nothing of our collective future, I just say, there but for the grace of God go I. I probably did the same thing and didn't see it and was part of the fall of Atlantis or something else. So yeah, just
yeah,
being in compassion for that state, for my sisters and brothers of Earth, because we are all sisters and brothers. We're all in this together, and recognizing, wow, okay, their consciousness is at a place where abnegating sovereign mind to authority is still the default setting, if you will.
oh, absolutely. I mean, during what I call the experience, it was amazing to me is how many people followed the narrative and hid in their homes.
Yeah.
Their fear of dying, which is actually inevitable.
Yeah.
No one gets out of here in a vessel, like,
Yeah.
So that always was curious for me. It's like, wow, you're going to go hide in your house, fear of
Mhm.
something based on a condition,
I,
and
I,
I
I
was
question.
ousted for not participating in the
Yeah.
story by a lot of people, and still,
Mhm.
because it's fine. I just know that my system functions differently. My motto is stay curious and question everything. And what does
Yeah.
it feel like? Pay attention to my feelings, because energy
Mm.
never lies.
Right, right. And that gets back to that whole thing of if you can even feel your feelings, because if you've been shut down by fear and trauma, that's the mind can go back and forth. I think I feel, and can't even perceive what's authentic within the self. And, years of watching TV and just, whatever the authority says must be true, that numbs you. It numbs you out. And so does excessive work. I think uncreative, soulless work, which so many people have endured for since the Industrial Revolution. You know, I grew up in a family. My father worked in a factory. It was soul deadening work, repetitive, meaningless work. God bless him. He worked so hard to take care of us. But I mean, what does that do to a consciousness? It breaks down all creativity, all intuition.
Yeah, I went through a period where I just saw humans really as ants,
Yeah.
literally, and we're just kind of a
Hive mind.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
like wow, doing the thing, and if you go against the river or the current, people they really do kind of oust you. It's quite curious.
Yeah. Yeah. But in this case, during the experience, as you call it, that's a new one. So I like that. You know, of the last several years, there have been profound warrior truth tellers. And this is one of the things that I also talk about in my community and with my community is we all have our soul assignments. And we can, for those of us who are here to hold the light, to bring the light, to be conduits of loving light as priestesses, starseeds, light workers, our role is, our energy has to be impeccable. What we're consuming physically, but consuming mentally, emotionally. Of course, I went down a deep rabbit hole in 2020, researching and peering into the darkness big time because I needed to understand what's going on here. I mean, I knew there were nefarious characters at play, but nothing to the degree that I discovered. Wow. But my role is not to be one of those big truth tellers, nor is my role to be one of these tremendous star seeds that's going to come and rebuild New Earth. At least I don't think so right now. It's amazing some of the skills and abilities some of the young ones have, scientific proclivities for working with cleaning up plastic in the oceans and just genius stuff. That's not my bailiwick. And I stay in my own lane. What's my lane? To support the starseeds, light workers, and priestesses right now in holding the light, in not being bowled under, and in finding each other and not letting the exhaustion of the nonsense take us down, but rather to lift each other up.
Yeah, I can see that. It really is like we're in this frequency vibration. So I love that the return of the dragon.
Yeah, and it's funny because one of the ways that I really came into the whole sort of role that I have now is I was guided to do a summit called Return of the Priestess. And I heard the words and I bought the URL and I sat on it for almost a year. And long story short, when I ended up rolling it out, which was based on my tech VA, my tech support person's schedule, was right when the whole planet was locked down. I couldn't have known that because you prep a summit way, way in advance, right? So there's a return of happening big time, return of priestesses, return of dragons, return of, a remembrance of our interdimensional, multidimensional consciousness, and a return of the partnership between the elementals and humans is a piece that I have now come into that really feels like such a blessing. I feel a lot of gratitude about this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the elemental realm is a realm I frequent quite often. I do a free immersion, usually twice, 3 times a year, called The Rising of the Origins. And the
Mm.
first part is about laying the foundation and understanding the different elementals, along with
Uh-huh.
the elemental beings within each elemental and how they're actually connected to each energetic center. I work with a 12 chakra system, not
Uh-huh.
the traditional 7.
Mm-hmm.
And each element is actually associated with an energy center, just like the stars, the galaxy, the astrology is actually associated, the 12 signs, with an energy center. And we all have these. It's not what one's different, but we all have a unique gift and talent, a purpose we come to do. And I know in my life, I often go back to a lifetime, a timeline where I'm an indigenous woman, medicine woman that works with herbs and off grid herbs that are not of this earth to infuse and
Mm.
bring back into this world with the elementals as an assistant for what
Uh-huh.
I do. And the dragons, obviously, I did that whole dream state dragon, which was amazing. And the
Wow.
company, the product, when the owner of this particular company came to an event I held and I was introducing him and the product, he actually didn't know the story about the dragon until I shared it with him. But that
Ah.
was just all intuitively driven, the dragon. He was like, wow, I wish all my clients were like that. But it's based on these origins, this philosophy of both, the Ayurvedic principles and the Chinese. So it really is about the origins kind of getting awakened. And I think our earth is going to, it almost feels like it's going to get bigger and yet smaller.
Mm. Yeah, this ascension journey and Gaia's frequency shift. I think because our language is primarily still connected with the 3D, it's hard to find the right words to describe what we're perceiving at an energetic level. We'll have to come up with new words. The bigger, smaller Gaia.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. And I find words are funny. Mostly, I feel like feelings are actually the first language. Because when you
Mm-hmm.
think about babies, they're not speaking, they're
Right.
they're speaking their language. How fun would it be if we reverted back into that childlike wonder language, which is actually in my world, that would be like the seed sounds of the otherworldly beings,
Mm.
right? It's
Yeah.
not like the English. I had a near death experience when I was 7, and one of those beings is with me, and I can never say their name. They're androgynous, but it always reminds me of like the sound of David, but it's not, there's no D. It's very angelic
Huh.
speaking in tongues, and that's the same thing. The angelic language or light language, all of that has a different frequency to it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like that.
Interesting. Well, I've not had near death experience, not in this lifetime anyway, nor do I speak light language, at least at this point, although I sometimes find myself writing these symbol things that I don't know what they are. But as someone who does channel, it's pretty interesting to feel the different beings. And mostly I see myself as a microphone as opposed to, it's not like they're taking over my body. However, when the dragons come in, sometimes, and I just, it's interesting as we're recording this, just yesterday we did, I'm teaching a class called Divine Mother Codes, or I'm transmitting, it's not even teaching, I'm transmitting a class. And we did the code set for Naga Kanya and the Dragon Mothers. And I didn't expect to channel at all. This was like teaching, and then we do an code activation. And they came through and I couldn't not channel them. And my whole body started kind of moving in this way that I would never move. It's just not my way. And the power of them coming through was so really luscious. I don't know how else to say it. It was like a luscious feeling, but with great power, great loving power, not this sort of, scary monster fire breathing. Maybe they do that too, but, not when you're working with them, not when they know you're their ally.
Absolutely. It's definitely different. Yeah, I've never been afraid of when I channel, mostly because they show me all these wonderful things. And you just
Mhm.
can't, I mean, I guess if to the average person, it might feel like I was making it up. But in my reality, it's very real.
Well, that's a whole nother sort of line of exploration, because I've heard others, and I've experienced this as well, of this, am I just making this up? And then I think, but I would have never said that. And simultaneously, we know that when we are channeling beings, they have to use, to some degree, they have to work with the microphone, right? So they have to use my words and my concepts. So if they're bringing forth a concept, let's say that's very complex or whatever, they have to show and give me an analogy to speak it out, or present an analogy, like an image that I see in my mind that makes sense to me. So I don't fully really get how it works. All I know is that the things that come through aren't things that I would normally say. And I see this, I realized that I'd been channeling as a writer for many years, on and off. Some of it's my voice, but sometimes I read things and I go, I wrote that? No, I didn't write that. I transmitted that from, you could call it my higher self, or, the same thing. We don't fully, maybe we'll know after we pass, are these dragon mothers that I'm channeling and working with, and the Nagas, Are they other aspects of me and part of my monad, my soul monad? And so we're just connecting with each other across time space, which is only an illusion anyway. Is it important that we even clarify that? Is that even necessary to know that? I'm not really sure. All I know is that when it feels aligned and the mission, if you will, there's like a collaborative mission to be in service in a good way, then I trust that this is the right way to go, and it's for the higher good.
So now you have an upcoming event about the dragons coming soon?
Well, I have, when I go back to Asia in the winter, so I go there in the winters, I go to Southeast Asia. My base is Thailand, but I will be doing grid work in different areas. So Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. And I'm not sure at this point, as we're recording this, I'm not sure the specific details of whether I'll go also to Bali. It depends on how the world is and stuff, and my timing of things, because there's a coordination. So that being said, I've put together something called Grid Work Asia. And Grid Work Asia is a way for people to come in and do grid work with me to different places. And basically it starts with kind of a poll where you say, like, you go to a page and you can click a button and then you can fill out, like, I want to go to this country. These are the months I'm available. Here's my experience with being in that part of the world or not, just so I have a sense of it. And then we'll have a conversation and feel into, maybe you're already in the region or whatever. So Grid Work Asia. And then I will be having a retreat too. Again, date's not scheduled yet, but we're talking about November, December, January, February, March, this period, this window of time. So gridworkasia.com would be the best bet, or just my website, dawndelvecchio.com, for more info.
Absolutely. So when you say grid work, is this you do offerings to the earth and to the dragons?
Yeah, good question. No, we work with the dragons and the nagas. So we actually will be doing ceremony. So it's a mix of exploration of an area. So let's say you want to come with me to the Plain of Jars in Laos and caves up there where people lived for 9 years. We'll have some tourism experience. And these are very small groups because I'm not like keen on being a tour guide, right? For bigger groups, I do retreats, and that's a different option and more comfortable and luxurious. We go to Bali or southern Thailand or, nice places. This is a little bit more roughing it. This is more, you want to be able to be at a, $10, $20 a night little guest house that, with a hard bed, maybe. And then we go to these places and do ceremony and really feel into the energies of the place and bring light into the grids, working in collaboration with the dragons and the nagas.
It sounds very familiar to my trip to Mongolia and my West Africa, Burkina Faso. It's very intimate, small groups and working with the spirits of the land.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, working with
being.
the spirits of the land. Absolutely.
So is there anything else that your heart feels overjoyed to share with my listeners today?
I'm just thankful for the opportunity to share this. I'm very excited about this unexpected new assignment in my work, doing the grid work. And I have a deep love for the people of Southeast Asia. I believe I've lived there many times. And I know from my husband's experience and other people's experience traveling with me, it really is a nice way, to go with someone who knows the region. It's always nicer than to go all by yourself, right? And explore yourself. So I'm excited to work with those who are ready to work with the spirits of the land and the nagas and the dragons to really support and reclaim the lands for the peoples of those lands.
Yeah, the indigenous technologies.
Yeah. Also, I do want to say too, just at the sort of practical 3D level, we're also looking for different ways to support the people. So opportunities for donation, for example, like in Laos, there's still so many unexploded ordinances back from the US bombing of the lands there. So you can, like in the capital city, you can go to the museum and learn more about that. I'm looking for opportunities and finding opportunities to give, to actually donate, so that there's boots on the ground, people who are doing the work of removing mines, for example, or bombs there in Laos and other issues in other areas, so that we can support literally right there through vetted organizations, not top heavy NGOs where almost no money goes to the people. Like that's the old paradigm, right? That's the old system. No, we don't do that. We don't play in that arena.
Absolutely. You know, it is interesting because you hear stories, but unless you've ever been physically to where someone's telling the story, you can't really hear the story. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Like I
yeah,
used to
no
years
context.
ago be afraid to go to New York. Not that I was afraid, but people would be like, "Don't look at anyone in the eye." And I'd be like, "Well, why not? I look everyone in the eye." Or be careful going over there. Those people do this. No, that's a narrative. Somebody told you that story. It's not true. You've never been there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, I mean, I feel impassioned about what you said, like to clean up the tragedy of what we've done to their home.
Yeah.
There's a lot of healing. I can feel that needs to be done, not just to the land, but to the people, because that's vibrating in their bones.
Exactly, exactly. And so, as an American of Western European descent, Italian and French, it's not my job to go tell them how to live at all. They tell us, we need this. Okay, that's the 3D level. And then we, in the grid work Asia, we stealthily go in as a small group, 3, 4, 5 people, looking like tourists. And then we, with love in our hearts, offer light to the grids in that area for the people there to be done with as they, to support their own needs and experience, not by, trying to go in and be a rescuer. We can do that anywhere. We can do it wherever we live. We don't have to do it in Asia. It's just that I have a passion for Asia and I go there every winter. And now I have familiarity with it. We do grid when I have retreats here, we do grid work here as well in the Southwest. So
That absolutely makes sense with me. Well, it's been my pleasure to have you on my show today,
thank
Dawn.
you. Mine as well.
So, with all of that, I will have her connections in the show notes. And if this episode inspired you in some magical dragon like way, please comment, share, and tag at the Tonya D on your Instagram stories. And as well, to keep this momentum flowing, the link to donate to the show is also in the show notes. And with that, I will see you on the other side. Ashe, blessings.